Taking a look at some of the different 45 ACP options for pistols. We're looking at 3 polymer versions, the Smith & Wesson, the Glock, and the Kahr, and then 3 steel versions, the Kimber, the Taurus, and the SIG. All of them shoot the same round, this 45 ACP. A very popular round, been around for a long time. We'll just compare it really quickly with a 9mm. Tell the 9mm is just a hair shorter and quite a bit less diameter. So that's the thing that's common with all of these. There's quite a few differences though. We'll just start out with this Kahr. It's a polymer frame, a 6-shot, single stack magazine, real solid, well built gun, simple dot on top of a dot type of sight. All the safeties are internal, so they disengage as you pull the trigger. Again, a very well made pistol. It's the smallest out of the 6 that we have here. Next would be the Glock 21, 21 meaning the model. It's like a standard Glock, but it's a larger frame. Holds 13 rounds. This one has the standard Glock sights, so it's cup in the back and the dot up front. Again, very simple. All the safeties disengage as you pull the trigger. And the last polymer we got in this sample is the Smith & Wesson. Double stack magazine, this one holds 10. It's a stainless steel mag. Polymer frame again. A couple of different features on this one compared to the Glock. This one has night sights, so there's 3 dots that line up, and that's how you sight these in. Jump up here to the SIG. This is a SIG GSR, very well made, 1911. Again, this one's steel, so this one weighs quite a bit more. We'll get to the weights in a moment. This one's a 1911 style, so it's very much styled like a 1911 pistol. Big difference though is it's newer. Biggest difference that's visible is that it's got this rail for mounting lights and lasers. Next up is the Taurus PT1911. This one's an AR. It has the rail as well. Another popular revolver made down in South America. Lots of bells and whistles, so it's a little souped up from its standard 1911. And then the last one of these 3 is this Kimber. Now this one's a TLE RL2. Another steel revolver, or excuse me, another steel pistol. And this one's got a Surefire light on it with a remote switch. So lots of different options here. Now we'll get into some of the differences and similarities of them. Again, the biggest similarity is they all use the 45 ACP round. These 3 are going to share the same type of 1911 magazine. Most 1911s have the magazine release where your thumb is on the right side, the left side of the frame. They're a single stack, 7 or 8 round magazine. Most of the modern ones are 8 rounds. This one has just a bit of a enhanced base plate. Gives you a little bit of a finger grip there at the end of your grip, but also if it dropped to the ground it'd be a little more protected. But you can see from these different magazines they're all very similar and they would interchange with each other. Now the M&P and the Glock and the Kahr, of course, are proprietary magazines. They wouldn't swap with each other even though they all hold the same round. You can see some of the differences are that some of the pistols have serrations up front, like the Kimber, the Taurus, and the M&P, where others just have serrations in the back. Most of them have, well, most of the 1911 style for sure have an external safety on the left side of the frame, but both this Taurus and the M&P have an external safety that's ambidextrous. It's on both sides of the pistol, so that way whichever hand you might be holding your pistol with, you're going to be able to get to that safety. Now this particular one has a lock here on the hammer, so for safety you could lock that. The Kimber, an older style, doesn't have those type of features. Again, some of these, actually all three of the 1911 styles have this light rail, which allows a light like this Surefire to mount. It adds a little weight to the gun, and on a heavier gun like these, that might be more of an issue for people. Now let's jump into some weights. Happen to have our handy dandy scale here, and we'll start off with the small end of the extremes. So this Kahr in an unloaded configuration weighs 1 pound 5.8 ounces. Next we'll jump up to this Glock 21 unloaded. It's going to weigh 1 pound 13.2 ounces. And the last polymer frame of the group here is this Smith & Wesson M&P5, and it's 1 pound 13.2 ounces. And we'll jump up to these 1911s. We'll start with this Kimber. This one has a light, so it's not the best representation of weight, but to give an idea, we're talking 2 pounds 11 ounces. Next up is again the unloaded Taurus at 2 pounds 10 ounces. And then last in our group here is this SIG GSR, which is up at 2 pounds 9.6 ounces. So quite a big difference between a 2 pound steel frame gun and a 1 pound 5 ounce polymer gun. There's no light rail on the Kahr, but again, for deep concealment, usually people aren't looking for a light, so it's not a big issue. You've got removable grip panels. It's hard to see in the video, but this one's got sort of a Hogue type rubber grip. Very sticky. Not literally sticky, but it grips the hand well. That wouldn't fall out of your hand if it was wet or if you had gloves on. This next one, the Taurus, has a sort of a hard plastic grip. It's textured, so it does hold your hand well. But what it's got, that a lot of 1911s don't have, is some stippling in the front here. Next up, we've got the SIG, which has the more standard wood type of grip, and again, it's got some texture to it, just not as sticky as the rubber would be. And this one doesn't have the diamond cuts in front, but it does have some lines here which aid in keeping the hand steady on the gun. Take a look at the Kimber here, which actually has some really fine checkerboarding here, and boy, that sure does hold the hand well. It's also got some checkering back here. This one has the checkering as well. The polymer guns have that checkering just built into the frames. You know, it's difficult because these are quite a wide range of pistols to come up with actual differences, but there's some cosmetic differences. There's some things like the trigger guards here, are bigger or smaller depending on the gun. You can see the big difference between a polymer frame double action or double action only compared to a single action. I guess I should have mentioned that's one of the big differences, is that the steel frames here, the 1911 style, these are single action guns. What that means is single action, the trigger does one thing. So with the hammer down like that, I could pull that trigger all day, nothing's going to happen. On a double action, I don't have a true double action here, we have double action onlys, but on a true double action, what's happening is as I'm pulling that trigger back, it's pulling the hammer back and then dropping the hammer. On a single action, the person needs to pull that hammer back, and then the single action of the pulling the trigger drops that hammer. Now if there was rounds in the magazine, the pistol would cycle and it would come back forward on a live round, and the action of firing would bring that hammer back, and then the next trigger pull would do one job, and that would be to pull that hammer a second time. So these are single actions. They're normally carried with the hammer back, safety on. That way, as they're drawn from a holster and presented to the target, the thumb of the firing hand drops that hammer, or excuse me, drops that safety, finger engages and you're ready to shoot. Once you come off target, most 1911 shooters have got it as muscle memory to bring that thumb up and bring that gun back onto safety for a safe reholstering. Hammer back. Advantage of having ambidextrous is that if you're shooting with the left hand for whatever reason, your right hand's injured or you are left-handed, same thing, you can easily get to that safety, and with a good solid shooting grip, engage and disengage that safety anytime. As far as the springs, nothing really to worry about. Springs are designed to stay back. On these striker fire guns, they don't have the same internal workings obviously, so they're just a little bit different. As I mentioned, the trigger guard's a little different. The Glock's not the newest design anymore, so the trigger guard's a little more robust, let's say, than something like the Smith, which, being a newer pistol, has a, let's say, a more refined trigger guard. A little larger, so if you do have gloves on, you can get your finger in there a little easier. Just to compare these sight pictures, all three of these 1911s have very similar sights, so they're all going to be similarly 3 dots that align to create the sight picture. This is the one, this one has night sights, so they would glow. And again, these aren't the best group of pistols to use as a comparison, but to show the variety of pistols that can shoot the 45 ACP, I think this is a pretty good comparative sample. You've got some small, high quality CCW type pocket pistols, all the way up to your large, taking care of business, railed 1911s.